I solved a problem today, and I did it with just what I've got in this right hand. A few days ago, I designed and was cutting this leopard pattern, and this is where the problem began. I normally am a bottom feeder, which means that when I loosen the blade, I loosen it from the top clamp and I feed the blade through the bottom of the wood back up through the pattern. The larger the board is, the more complicated that gets. So when I'm doing a larger pattern, and in this case this is not even all that large, but for me it's a fairly large piece. When I'm doing a larger pattern, it's easier to loosen the blade from the bottom clamp and feed it down through the hole. Unfortunately, there's a problem there. If the piece is large enough, it's hard to know where the hole is in the table, and as you feed this blade back down through the small starter holes, you have a tendency to crimp the blade, especially if you're using smaller blades. And the other day when I was cutting this pattern, I probably went through 8 or 10 blades for a pattern that would normally only take me maybe 2 or 3 blades at the most. And the reason I did that is because I kept bending the very small blades I was using. Now if you're using a number 5 blade or something larger, you won't have much of a problem. But on some of the real small blades, and in this case I was using I think a number 1 spiral blade to cut this pattern, it definitely was a problem. So I had a problem, I needed a solution. It wasn't ending third world hunger or anything serious like that, so I didn't need a solution that cost a lot of money. I needed something cheap. Now on my Seiko scroll saw, the top has these guidelines which are there to try to help you line this up, and they work pretty good on smaller boards, but the larger the board gets, the more this gets covered up and you can't see it. So like I said, I needed a cheap solution, and I think I found one. Right now, if we release the tension on this blade and we loosen the bottom clamp and pull the blade up through, and we're ready to cut our next hole, normally we would just kind of guide this around, get the blade started, and hope we were pretty close. What if you had this option? Perfectly lined up every time. Let's take another look at that a little closer, just in case the camera has a hard time picking it up. I've just finished cutting this interior hole. It's time to move on to this hole up here. Simply activate my foot switch, align the crosshairs with the next hole, and I'm ready to drop the blade down through the hole with it perfectly lined up every time. Here's the little device that makes that possible. It's a $4.50 crosshair laser, red laser, that I bought on Amazon. They come in a pack of 2. They actually cost you $9 and some cents, but very inexpensive at under $5 a piece. They operate between 3 volts and 5 volts, so it's easy to find a little wall wart power supply that'll drive them, and I'll show you that here in a second. All we have to do basically is find a way to attach the laser where it's out of the way, and yet will still give us these results. I tried mounting this laser a few different ways by attaching it to the saw. None of them worked very well, so I had to come up with a solution to attach it off the saw to keep it up and out of the way. So here's the little laser, and it's just been a hole drilled in some aluminum stock that I bent at a couple of key different angles here to give me the projection that I needed to go down and line it up with the hole. So once we get the arm up, all we have to do is activate the laser and line it up with where we want the blade to go through the hole in our table. So to do that, I just simply built a little wooden stand that sits on the floor, and we'll get down there and look at it a little closer. Comes up and it plugs into a second foot switch that I have, so that way it's not on all the time. You wouldn't want this shining all the time. You just want to turn it on while you need it. So I've got a foot switch to operate my scroll saw. Well, I've got a second one now to turn this laser on and off. So let's take a little closer look at that. Here's the laser mounted on the aluminum bracket. attached to this wooden stand. The wooden stand obviously goes down to the floor. I've got a heavy block here that just holds it in place a little better. I've got the foot switch that I use to operate the saw, and over here I've got a second foot switch, a dead man switch, that turns the laser on and off. So I just simply have the little wall wart to drive the laser plugged into the second foot switch. So that's it. An annoyance type problem solved with a little $5 part. If you need to buy the wall wart, it's going to cost you another $5 to $10 for that. I have a whole box of those things that I've been collecting over the years, so I just grabbed one out of the box. Again, the little laser operates between 3 and 5 volts, so when you're looking for the power supply, you just want to look at the output on the label and see if it says 5 volts or 3 volts. You can find, usually you'll find the 5 volt one pretty easy. I will leave the Amazon link to these little lasers. You can get these lasers that are a line across. The one I have here is shaped like a cross, or you can get just a single straight line, or you can get just a dot. So all three of them would work. I just thought the cross gave me the most visibility, so that's what I went with. Very simple project. Took me less than an hour to put together and not very much money. So if this is a problem that you've had trying to cut larger scroll saw patterns, give one of these a try. Works pretty well.